Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Cy Huffer and Friends. This is a podcast designed to help you flourish at life and relationships. I'm your host, Cy Huffer, and the way this podcast works is that I invite you and expose you to different friends of mine all around the country and the world that I introduce you to, that you get to know and hear them talk about relevant topics about life and relationships and help you thrive in one of those two areas. I believe I have the best friends in the world, and that me sharing them with you will help you thrive in those areas because they've helped me thrive in those areas. And so make sure you follow along. You can do that on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. That's where we're all located on all of our different channels, and that's where all the different episodes drops every single week. Today, we have a bonus episode. It's going to be a book review. And so I spent the last few months reading different books, and I wanted to highlight for you all one. These are people that I learn a lot from that help me thrive in life and relationships. And this book is the best book I've read so far in 2026. I've not read it before, so this is brand new to me, but it's called Leadership and Self-Deception. It's by the Arbinger Institute, and it was absolutely fantastic. This book is a fable, kind of like Patrick Lencioni does a lot of different leadership books as fables or stories, fictional stories that kind of unpack the principles of that book and that topic, whatever it is. And so this one is very similarly written. If you've read any of his books, you know how those work. So it's a really easy read. It's short, it's fun, and it's absolutely sharp. It's incredible. The resources. I was so convicted. I was laughing. At the end, I was in tears. I mean, it's a great book. So it's a fable about a guy named Tom Callum, who had started to work for a new company. This is all fictional, called Zagram, is how I pronounced it in my head. Part of the orientation was meeting with the executive vice president, a guy named Bud, for a day-long one-on-one meeting. He didn't know what he was walking into. And as he came in, Bud's like, "Hey, you have a problem." And Tom's nervous, like, "What problem do I have?" And he goes, "Actually, it's a problem that we all have." And he goes, "The problem that you have is called self-deception." And this is basically the whole book. The whole book is this idea of self-deception, that we deceive ourselves and we live life in the box, is what they call it. So you're either in the box or out of the box. When you're in the box, you're in this, imagine yourself being in a closed box, and you struggle to see clearly and understand the problems that you have. You have a problem and you are not aware of the problem. That's what self-deception is. It's having a problem you don't think you have. Other people can see it, but you're in the box. You're blind to it. It's a blind spot. You can't see it. And he says, at Zagram, our top strategic initiative is to minimize individual and organizational self-deception. That's their top strategic initiative. Then he tells a story about this doctor named Ignaz Semmelweis, a European doctor in the mid-1800s. He worked at Vienna's General Hospital as a teaching hospital, which had students coming in and learning from the doctors as they are caring for the patients. And there was this horrendous mortality rate among women in the maternity ward. 1 in 10 women died that were admitted into this part of the hospital. It was such a bad reputation. It was so bad that women would not go to the hospital. They would give birth in the street rather than go to the hospital because they didn't want to die. And all of the symptoms that these women died from, they just started labeling it as childbed fever. Nothing worked. Everything they tried did not work. And the women kept asking to be moved to a different section of the maternity ward where the mortality rate was not 1 in 10, but 1 in 50. Not great, but still better than 1 in 10. And so the only difference was Semmelweis's section, his section of the maternity ward, was attended by doctors and the other was attended by midwives. And so they're like, why is that making it so different? They standardized everything to figure out what the two were doing differently. Nothing made sense. So the doctor leaves, Semmelweis leaves for 4 months to go visit another hospital. When he comes back, he returns to discover that the death rate had fallen significantly in his section of the ward in his absence. Okay, so he's gone, comes back, death ward's fallen. I mean, the death rate has fallen drastically. It led him to an inquiry to think about the possible significance of research done by doctors who were studying cadavers. Remember, this is a teaching hospital. Doctors split their time between research on cadavers and treatment of live patients. The midwives did not. There was no understanding of germs at this time. They didn't even have a concept of it. Semmelweis spent far more time doing research on the cadavers than anybody else. And so he was doing that work a lot. So his section of the ward had a lot of deaths. His conclusion was that there are particles from cadavers and other diseased patients that are being transmitted to healthy patients on the hands of the physicians. This is his theory, not knowing anything about germs. He's saying maybe there's something on these cadavers that we are bringing into these healthy patients. He instituted a policy: doctors must wash their hands thoroughly in a chlorine and lime solution before examining any patient. The death rate fell to 1 in 100, not 1 in 10. These particles were later identified as germs. They had a problem. They didn't think they had a problem. They were in the box. That germ, the disease is self-deception. When you get in the box, you are deceived. The germ that causes that disease is what they call self-betrayal. Okay, and so this self-betrayal is this. Well, let me go back to this being the disease. The disease is self-deception. Okay, that's what's causing death, is when you are deceived yourself and you're living life in the box. When you live life in the box towards others, you see others as objects. You justify your own behavior, what you're doing, and you blame others for theirs. Your behavior then in the box invites the very problems you complain about. There's this part of the book that says, when we're in the box, our view of reality is distorted. We see neither ourselves nor others clearly. We are self-deceived, and that creates all kinds of trouble for the people around us. Okay, because when you're in the box, you want to justify your own behavior and blame others. So you a lot of times maximize their faults, you inflate them, and you minimize yours. And that's the reality that you're not seeing clearly. It's a distorted reality. So that's the disease that creates havoc for yourself and those around you in your workplace. Okay, so what's the germ? What gets us in the box? And it starts with the moment of choice. They say the germ is self-betrayal. Okay, this is fascinating. So this is how we get in the box. Self-betrayal is an act contrary to what I feel I should do for another. Okay, so I feel like I'm supposed to. The guy uses an example of him and his wife Nancy sleeping in bed. The baby starts crying, and the feeling he has is I should get up and take care of the baby. And yet that's the impulse, is to do that right, good thing. And yet for some reason you resist it. You resist that feeling. And that's the choice that you make. You can either honor the feeling and go take care of the baby crying, or you can resist it. And then when you resist it, you betray yourself. So when you betray yourself and you resist the feeling that you should do, and you don't do the thing that you feel like you should do, you have to start creating a narrative to make you feel okay about that decision, that self-betrayal. And so you start justifying yourself and the decision to not do the thing that you feel like you should do. That's the minimizing your faults and your problems. And then you start, how you see others changes, you start blaming them and maximizing and inflating and enlarging their faults. It says this: when I betray myself, I begin to see the world in a way that justifies my self-betrayal. When I see a self-justifying world, my view of reality becomes distorted. That's me supposed to pray for workers for the harvest field. Okay. And so they start in the book. It's fascinating as Bud's teaching this to Tom. He starts just pulling all of these points and teaching from this story about him and his wife and the baby. And he starts applying it to all these different areas of life. And it's really cool how he unveils a story. But here's the main points. Self-betrayal is an act contrary to what I feel like I should do for another, and yet I don't do it. When I betray myself, I begin to see the world in a way that justifies my self-betrayal. That's number 2. Number 3, when I see a self-justifying world, my view of reality becomes distorted. I minimize my faults and maximize and inflate theirs. That's not a correct view of reality. So when I betray myself, number 4, I enter the box. That's the germ. Self-deception's a disease. When I betray myself and my feeling, I enter the box where I can't see the world with accuracy, the reality as it is. And when I blame others and justify myself. Over time, number 5, certain boxes become characteristic of me and I carry them with me. This is fascinating. We seem to be in the box in a given situation, but can't identify a feeling that you betrayed in that moment. This is a quote from the book. That's a clue that you might already be in the box. And you may find it useful to wonder whether you're carrying around some self-justifying images. He said one of those that he carried around was this image of, I'm a good husband. I'm a good husband. Because I'm a good husband, when she critiques me for the things that I maybe am doing or not doing, that may not be a feeling that I'm supposed to do something for her that I betray, but that critique or whatever that is, that comment, my box I'm carrying around from other moments, the self-justifying image, I dismiss that. Even if it could be great feedback on how I could be a better husband, I dismiss it because my self-justifying image is I'm already a good husband. The way I act is okay, it's adequate, and so because of that, I blame her for that comment, inflate her issues as why she's a bad wife, and then I minimize my problems because the just self-justifying image is that I'm a good husband. By being in the box, here's number 6, I provoke others to be in the box. This is called collusion. People in the box trigger each other. Each person's poor behavior justifies the others. This creates a reinforcing cycle. You act poorly. So I react poorly. That person reacts to my action in a negative way. And because they act in a negative way to my poor behavior, I feel justified in my poor behavior. See, there it is. There it is. This is a quote from the book. What I need most when I'm in the box is to feel justified. Man, that wrecked me. Like when that quote, I just like circled it, had started. What you need most when you're in the box is to feel like your behavior is justified. And that can be justified by your own stories that you tell, your self-justifying images. It's also justified by other people's bad behavior and poor actions. If they do what I blame them and assume and project upon them the worst possible things possible, if they do that, it reinforces me in the box. See, there it is. Now I'm even more justified for being in the box and viewing them that way. In the box, number 7, we invite mutual mistreatment and obtain mutual justification. We collude in giving each other reason to stay in the box. This is a quote from the book. However bitterly I complain about someone's poor behavior toward me and about the trouble it causes me, I also find it strangely delicious. It's my proof that others are as blameworthy as I've claimed them to be, and that I'm as innocent as I claim myself to be. The behavior I complain about is the very behavior that justifies me. So that's life in the box. That's how we get in it. That's how we stay in it. How do we get out? They said self-betrayal is the germ that creates the disease of self-deception. So what doesn't work in the box to get out? Big summary is behaviors. You don't behave your way or get a new tactic that gets you, or a skill that gets you out of the box. He said trying to change others doesn't work. Doing my best to cope with others doesn't work. Leaving doesn't work. Even leaving the relationship, because he says this is the interaction between Bud and Tom. Look what he says. Well, let's think about it. Where do I think the problem is when I'm in the box? In others, Tom said. Exactly. But where in fact is the problem when I'm in the box? In yourself. Yes. So if I leave, what goes with me? He asked the problem. I said, softly nodding. I get it. The box goes with you. This is what addicts call doing a relocation. It's like, okay, I'm an addict in this place. So if I just remove myself from the situation, then I'll stop pursuing that addiction. No, the problem is not the situation or the context that you're living in, the place. The problem is you. You're the addict. And so you're taking that addiction with you. And the same is true for the box. Self-deception. If you're living in the box, leaving a relationship, you've not learned to get out. Okay. Communicating doesn't help you get out. Implementing new skills or techniques. This is what he says. No matter what skill you teach me, I can be either in the box or out of the box when I implement it. And that raises the question, will using a skill in the box be the way to get out of the box? He says, no. Changing my behavior doesn't get me out. So consider this. If being in or out of the box is something that's deeper than the behavior, do you suppose the key to getting out of the box will be a behavior? It's like, no. All these skills and things that we train people on to have better conflict resolution, he goes, that's not what's going to get you out of the box. That's not going to fix self-betrayal or self-deception. What gets you out? Here it is. You got to read this book. Even though I'm giving you the highlights, this is so good. What gets you out of the box? Stop resisting others. This is a quote from the book. The box is a metaphor for how I'm resisting others. By resisting, I mean that my self-betrayal isn't passive. In the box, I'm actively resisting what the humanity of others calls me to do for them. So the first thing you have to do is you have to see other people that you're in the box against. Because you can be, at the same time, in the box against this person and out of the box with these other people, right? Because you haven't colluded with them. You don't have a history with them. You've not betrayed yourself in that relationship, but you have in this relationship. And so what he encouraged them to do is, listen, let the out-of-box relationships that you have cause you to question your own virtue. Your own virtue. Here's the quote: the out-of-the-box nature of your experience with these two people invited you to something that we never do in the box. It invited you to question whether you were in fact as out of the box as you had assumed in other areas of your life. And what you learned transformed your view of your wife. He's saying, take other people's relationships. Go ahead. Listen, we can talk. I don't have this same bitterness and this same blaming and self-justifying that I have with this other person. So then allow the out-of-the-box relationship to question your own virtue, not justify your behaviors or your self-justifying image or narrative of yourself, and not, minimize your problems and maximize or inflate theirs that you're in the box with. Let those out-of-the-box relationships cause you to question your own virtue and take a real hard look at yourself. There's some leadership implications that they talk about throughout the book. It's really good. Here's some just quotes and some things that I wrote down. Leadership is less about technique and more about a way of being. He says it's seeing people as for their humanity that they are, as people. As Christians, we would say seeing people as image bearers of God. That they are made in God's image, that they are fearfully and wonderfully made, that they are precious, and that they are valuable. He says you can't focus on results because in the box, you're focused on yourself. He goes, so our number one strategic initiative is to get people out of the box and our organization out of the box, because we believe when you're in the box, you don't focus on the results of the organization. When you're in the box, you have a lot of sideways energy of just focusing on yourself, justifying everything that you do and blaming everybody else. And that's sideways energy that doesn't help us accomplish results and help us hold each other accountable. And it's a fear of conflict. Here comes 5 dysfunctions of a team, right? Because so you can't focus on results because in the box you focus on yourself. Number 3, here's another leadership implication. Because when I'm blaming others, I'm not doing it because they need to improve. I'm not blaming them because they need to improve. I'm blaming them because their shortcomings justify my failure to improve. That one was harsh. The reason I blame others and I live in the box against certain people is because I blame them not because they need to improve, but because me blaming them and their shortcomings, it justifies me not doing anything about me not changing anything about me failing to improve myself and question my own virtue. It justifies me as I am because they're the problem. Man, that was hard. That was hard, but that was good. And then he says this at the end: the lesson then is that you need to be a different kind of leader. That's your obligation as a leader. When you're in the box, people follow you, if at all, only through force or threat of force. But that's not leadership, that's coercion. The leaders people choose to follow are the leaders who are out of the box. Just look back on your life and you'll see that that's so. Super good book. I highly recommend it. It's 150 pages, 70 pages or so. You could read it in a day, in a couple hours. But man, it's a great resource, even for your teams to go through, language to use. They actually have a grid, I guess a list at the end of like, okay, how do you know the information? Now, how do you live this out? Like, what do you do and do's and don't do's? And I think that's a really helpful list as well. So hopefully you enjoy this bonus episode on a book, my favorite book of the year so far, Leadership and Self-Deception, Getting Out of the Box. As always, follow along on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. And don't forget that you are made for more. So don't settle for anything less. Have a great day.